Welcome back to r/LegalAdvice, where people ask questions, get advice, and we get satisfaction. If you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, I take prescription medication for ADHD, I started a new job and drug test collection site released a preliminary result to employer of me failing a drug test. Company rescinded job offer despite a clean result from the lab. Left old job for new one and now I am unemployed. 2 locations because I live and work in Tennessee. The drug test collection site is in Massachusetts. Not sure if that matters, but I want to disclose anyway. Here is the story. I have ADHD and have a prescription for medicine that will show up on a drug test. Never had any issues before. I would usually go give the sample and tell the collector about my medication and even show them the bottle. They always tell me the sample is analyzed at the lab and I would be called for any issues. I would always get a call by the lab informing me of the positive result and I would give them my prescription information. Upon verifying my prescription, the lab would send back a negative result. No issues whatsoever. I was offered a new job and as a result put in 2 weeks notice with my old job. During the interview I was told I would have to take a drug test and asked if there would be any issues. I told my manager there would be no issues. On my first day my manager told me to leave an hour early to take my drug test, for which I would be paid. I went to the collection site, provided my sample and informed and showed my bottle to the collector. As usual, they told the lab will contact me for that info. After providing my sample to the collector, they did a preliminary test with those strip things. To no surprise, it came back positive for the category of what my script is for. I reminded the collector of my prescription and I was told it is being sent to the lab and I will be contacted by them. I did not think anything of it, just business as usual. On the way home I get a call from my manager and she says there was an issue with my drug test. I immediately tell her it is because of prescriptions and it will be cleared up with the lab when they analyze it. She seemed positive about it, saying she believed me when I told her I would have no drug test issues and still believes me about this issue, but in the meantime I should not come back in till it is cleared up with the lab. I understood her position and agreed, knowing it would take a day or 2 and things would be cleared up and I would be back to work. Just to speed things up, I called the lab the next day and was told they don't have my sample yet, but they marked my name as a priority, so I will be called by the MRO as soon as it is analyzed. I get a call the next morning by the lab, give my script info, and he verifies it while I am on hold. He comes back on the line and tells me everything checks out and he is sending back a negative result. I immediately call my manager and tell her that it has been cleared up with the lab and she will get back a negative result. She tells me she will contact me as soon as she hears from the lab. A couple hours later my manager calls me and tells me that she got the negative result back, but HR has decided to rescind my offer. She goes on to express how apologetic she is and she would want to hire me, but HR has made this decision and her hands are tied. I asked her to explain more and she says that HR explained to her that it is too risky and also that I wasn't honest in my interview by saying there would be no issues with my drug test. Now I am jobless with no income. I left a perfectly good job to take this one because it was more money. I'm not sure what to do. I still want this job and would like to resolve this as amicably as possible. The manager is on my side, but according to her, her hands are tied by HR. I feel this is the result of someone in HR that is a little overzealous in their job. ADHD is considered a disability, so could this be considered discrimination? Should I file an EEOC? Should I get a lawyer? What can I do? Like I said, I left a job for this one and now I have no job. Thanks in advance for your replies. Edit, thank you everyone for your replies. I have a consultation with an attorney tomorrow. I considered reaching out to HR but ultimately decided I should talk to an attorney first because it might not do any good and as one user said, it may tip them off. I will be sure to post a full update when all is said and done. And a user in the comments said, is it just me or is this the second ADHD pre-hire drug test failure in this sub in 2 days? Proper procedure would be for the lab to not give any results until they have verified the prescription. Do a search on threads in this sub looking for posts where I mention FMCSA and benzodiazepines for details. And another user said, at our company it is pretty apparent if someone is having an issue with the drug test because we give negative results back after a few hours. MRO reviewed tests take longer to come back because their doctor has to contact the person taking the test to see if the meds they are taking would give a positive. One takes a few hours, the other may take a few days. We pretend to not know if someone's medication set off a positive, but it is pretty obvious. But unlike OP, we don't care other than ask staff to let us know if any medications they are taking may cause them to have difficulty driving or passing medications. And guys, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. Update to the ADHD story. I am surprised how quickly this situation was resolved. I met with an attorney for a consultation on Thursday. After talking and explaining my situation, she told me this strikes a nerve and hits very close to home with her because her husband and one of her kids has ADHD. I could tell how furious she was by her expression and mannerisms. She told me that she would contact the company pro bono, but if it came to a lawsuit, she would take it on contingency as I could get punitive damages. I told her I don't want to sue anyone if I don't have to, I just want this job offer back as I've been waiting a long time for a job like this. She also explained that if her attempts at contacting the company were unsuccessful, I could file an EEOC charge and go through them before filing a lawsuit with her if needed. Ultimately, she told me this is discrimination due to an unrelated incident a while back. I have an app on my phone that records all phone calls, one-party consent in my state, and saves them to my Google Drive. I played the calls with my manager to the attorney. When my manager informed me of the preliminary result, I explained to her my prescription medication and my ADHD. The attorney told me it was good that I disclosed that at the time because now the company can no longer claim they didn't know about my disability, which would be a defense to discrimination. Also, this is an office job and my meds and ADHD would not cause any issues in performing my duties. I was not terminated at this time, just suspended pending the lab test. The call after my lab test came back, my manager said the offer was rescinded and my employment was being terminated due to the preliminary result conflicting with the lab result, but I would be paid for my 1 day of work. As far as not being honest in my interview regarding the drug test, my attorney feels that is just a smokescreen. Any reasonable person would think that question is being asked specifically to illegal substances, so essentially we don't waste each other's time if I knew I would fail. I had no obligation to disclose any legally prescribed medications. I asked about the collection site. Apparently the collection site is not directly affiliated with the lab, they just have a contract with the lab to analyze the samples they collect. Disclosing the preliminary result, and she said she wasn't sure if they did anything illegal because I signed a release before providing my urine sample, and this is a separate issue, but she thinks an argument can be made for negligence. She would check up on it because she's not 100% familiar with collection sites releasing preliminary results in lieu of a lab test. She said that if it was a positive test for a substance that had no legitimate medical purpose, then maybe they would be okay releasing that, but even still, dipping some strips in urine is not a certified or accredited test. She said ultimately the point of having a lab test and MRO is to remove all potential variables of a false positive, and the point of the MRO is to have someone that is knowledgeable with what can cause a positive result and that can analyze if that positive result is valid or not to prevent sending false positive results back. If it comes down to a lawsuit, she would name the collection company as part of it, but ultimately this is about the company discriminating. Anyway, my attorney called me the next day saying she had a conference call with the head of HR and their legal department. When she initially talked to the head of HR, he had been on vacation when all this went down and he had no knowledge of my situation and would look into it and get back to her. He called her back with legal on the line and they decided to re-offer me my job and pay me for all the time missed. My attorney goes on to say they want to have a conference call with me present and if I could come into her office that afternoon. I agreed. When I was at her office for the conference call, those present on the call were the head of HR, legal department, my manager, my attorney and myself. Essentially, this call was an apology to me. The head of HR profusely apologized for this. He went on to tell me that this decision was made by someone new in HR, and despite the head being on vacation, he always makes himself available to his employees and he should have been consulted at the very least. If he had known about this, he would have gone with the lab result and we would have never been in this situation. He went on to say that he talked with the rep that decided to rescind my offer, and although he was apologetic, the head of HR felt that the rep did not fully understand the legal position he put the company in and he is no longer employed with the company. They want me to come back on Monday, tomorrow, to continue my employment. He stated that my manager spoke very highly of my qualifications and interview, and they want nothing more than a person with my background on their team. He even said he would treat me and my manager to lunch Monday. He told me that they will give me a private office to accommodate my ADHD. I told them that was not necessary, as I am perfectly capable of performing my job in a cubicle like everyone else, but he insisted. So now I have my job back, getting back pay, have a private office and being treated to lunch by the head of HR. I owe much thanks to this community for all the advice and support you have given me. I wish I could personally shake hands with all of you. I was so scared before reading your comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Edit, I'm going to disclose my medication. I take a medication that Ripe cannot pronounce called Vyvanse. A lot of people assume I'm taking Adderall. I used to take Adderall, but my doctor suggested this other one when it came out. Although similar and made by the same company, this one is much better medication for me. The release is more controlled, it is not as intense as Adderall, my appetite is not affected, I sleep much better with it and it doesn't give me the crash that Adderall does when wearing off. And the next one is titled, Pennsylvania, can an internet service provider run cables over my courtyard? An ISP hung a cable to my neighbor's apartment a couple of years back. It runs through my property at around 10 inches above grade. So it is naturally a little unsightly. Yesterday my husband ran into the installers adding another cable alongside the first one. He told them not to run it and that he would cut it down. They installed it and left. Do we have any right to demand they take the wires down and find a different way to wire our neighbors? Edit, thank you everyone for your information and feedback. I will post an update if the jail has a computer I can use. And a user in the comments said, don't cut the cable, it will not end well for you. If it is your property, you should call the ISP and ask them to help resolve it. Move the cables, bury them, etc. Don't take action on your own. And another person said, first check the title for your property to see what easements there are for utility companies. Cable companies don't always have easements, but if they do, read it carefully. If a good lawyer for the homeowner wrote it, it may be only for providing service to your house or limit what they can do. Update to the internet service provider story. This is not the landlocked neighbor update that you deserve, but the landlocked neighbor update that you're getting. In my original post I complained that the local ISP had strung wires diagonally through my backyard rather than use a direct route to connect my neighbor. Armed with the correct terminology and some confidence thanks to your comments, I called the ISP every week and was able to talk directly to the install department, something that lots of reps I had talked to said couldn't be done. They came out twice and the last one agreed to move the wire. I did not get a chance to say the Latin that I had learned. For whoever owns the soil, it is theirs up to heaven and down to hell. I've never been to court, but I assume that like a high mass you guys speak in all Latin, but everything worked out for the best. The solution was something I had not thought of and also the most boring solution ever. They moved the drop wire over so it runs against the blue building. It is now barely in my airspace and no longer an eyesore. It has come to light that the next door neighbor laid part of his building's footer under what was never his property and what is now my property. It is probably only 6 feet along the 30-inch property line, but I still wonder if I have any recourse. And given by the lack of any further updates, I guess the OP did not have any further recourse. And the last one is a little bonus story from our own subreddit posted by user Kato Novus, and it has nothing to do with legal advice, but it is titled, Disturb my customers and then tell me to call the cops. Okay. For some reference, I worked in hotels, and when this happened I was the night auditor. One night I had a customer walking back and forth between his room and an overlook of the lobby while shouting into his cell phone, disturbing other customers who were trying to sleep. I get a few calls complaining about the noise. I tried to leave the desk after the first one, but people kept calling, so I had to keep answering. I went to the room in question and knock on his door. "Excuse me sir, I've had some complaints from other guests who are trying to sleep. I don't mind you using your phone, but I have to ask you to keep the volume down while you're here." Guy: "Okay, I will." "Thank you." Roughly 10 minutes later, he is shouting into his phone once more, and the complaints come to me once again. "Excuse me sir, you have gotten loud again, and I need you to keep it down so people can get their rest." Guy: "Shut up, call the cops." He then enters his room and slams the door in my face. So I did as he said. I called them up, told them what transpired and that I wanted him off this property. The police arrived quickly and accompanied me to his room, where I knocked on the door and he answered. "Sir, I did exactly as you said and brought the police into the matter. I want you off this property for the night." "What?" Cop number 1: "You heard him." Guy: "But I didn't know he worked here." The cops then look at me, then back at the guest. Cop number 2: "You see that shirt? You see that name tag? Both of those have this hotel's logo on them. He came up here twice asking you to keep quiet while people are trying to sleep, and then you tell him to bring us into this." This man was part of a work crew. He had a crew chief who was staying on property, and I did give 2 attempts to call him, once to his room, no answer, and once to his mobile, also no answer. Apparently, the chief thought it would be a good idea to go out to a club that night and leave his phone off. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.